2, 1, and we're live. What's up, everybody? Namaste. Thank you so much for joining the Light Side. My name is Dani, and today I have a very special guest with us. His name is Jeff Olson. He has a lot of accolades for downhill skiing. So a 2-time Olympian, yes, Olympics, 3-time national champ, Pan American gold medalist, and 2 little claims to fame for men's downhill on the World Cup Tour, which he's going to unpack for us. So Jeff, welcome.
Welcome, Dani. Good to be here. Happy caving.
Yes, happy caving. It's been great. I
I'm
have a
ready
nice little
I'm
cave.
ready to be released here.
What's the first thing you're going to do?
I'm going to go. Well, that's a good question. I haven't even thought of that. I've been out. I'm mountain biking and doing stuff. It's not like I'm not out. So anyway, it's just good mental sort of get the mental release. Yeah.
Yes, like able to be outside, like no restriction. It's kind of like when
And
your
hang with
parents tell
others.
you.
So anyway, yeah.
Yes. Okay, so we have a lot to go over, and I just to preface everybody, I want to talk a little bit about your athletic career, and then
Okay.
I want to talk about your journey into entrepreneurship, because I believe that there are many different parallels that go with
Yeah.
athleticism and being an entrepreneur. So first and foremost, let's unpack the downhill skiing journey.
Whoa! I'll give you the Cliff Note version. I was a kinetic, hyperactive child before Ritalin, and I needed a release. And I did all sports, and I found skiing was a thing that spoke to my kinetic nature, and I got plugged into a group of young whippersnapper skiers that were older than me, and they wouldn't wait for me, and I had to keep up with them. So that was sort of like pulling someone while they're running. That accelerated my learning curve, and I just found a thing, and I found a groove, and I love the speed. I love the outdoor lifestyle. I love everything about it, and yeah, man, that carried me for a decade plus on the World Cup Tour and Olympic Games and all that. And yeah, it was a saw the world, did a lot, saw a lot, got some great life lessons from it all. But it was a pretty power packed lifestyle, and man, it was yeah, it's my alma mater, as I call it.
That's amazing. Oh, I know that feeling. I kind of have one too.
Yeah.
So, I want to talk a little bit about mindset. So, like the power of the mind, especially being an elite athlete, getting ready for some world titles. I want to talk about the power of the mind. What can you speak on that a little bit?
Oh yeah. uh, the mind is a weapon, and it cuts both ways. Double-edged sword. A lot of athletes think that working harder will get them to their goal, and I was always so my career, my life. Here's my life lesson from my athletic career: is I was always the hardest worker, and I actually worked my body into the ground and beat it up and broke it, and had to retire because of my overtraining. I was doing heavy squats, heavy plyometrics, and I developed patella tendonitis, and game over, man, because that's the fulcrum of the whole knee. So I had 4 knee surgeries in the span of a year, and that was game over. So the life lesson I took away from that is working hard will get you very, 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 very far. But there's a lot of collateral damage on the way to the top of your life. That's just not athletics. That's just life. There can be a lot of collateral damage, meaning uh, uh, there's a lot of injury and pain and struggle and all that cliche stuff. But what drives you through it is that rage to master, that thing in there, that inner anchor, as I call it. But what I learned was this: it's okay to work hard, and working hard will get you really far. But if you can work smart and hard, game on, right? And there's one third piece to that, which is find your tune, find your voice, find your narrative, find your authenticity, find your signature. So it's work hard, work smart, be yourself. And the working smart part, I see a lot of people, a pretty famous quote by a guy, Jim Rohn, who's a mentor of mine, and he's passed, but he said, tiny errors in judgment played out over time can lead to profound disappointment and failure. And it's this little tweak, but you amortize or compound that little judgment over time can lead to profound disappointment and failure. And my little thing was more was better, harder was better, grind was better, and I grinded my body into the ground. So life lesson there.
That's huge. And that's actually was one of the things I was going to ask you. So thank you for answering that. And I see a lot of that with bodybuilding too. Like some of the greats, Ronnie Coleman, he's can barely walk now after all of the lifting, all of the stuff that he's done. And while it got him where he wanted to go and he did very well, now he's sort of paying the price of the collateral damage of being such an animal, which was great at the time, but now he's kind of suffering for it.
Yep.
So thank you for bringing that up, because I think a lot of times, and even today with people building businesses and being an entrepreneur and kind of some of the stuff that's out there on social media, it's like, go, 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 hustle, hustle, hustle. And that's the way to do it. But like that, there is collateral damage with that too. Like your family, your relationships, some of these things around you might start to fall. So if you can find a way to hustle smart, then that's going to give you the result that you want.
Yeah, I tell athletes that they're entrepreneurs, on the field of play.
Mm-hmm.
So if using that sort of, athletes instinctually, they're always trying to find out what's next. They take initiative, they're problem solvers, they're doing they're on the field of play, and they're just always in the game and always hustling and always trying to level up. And that's a very entrepreneurial sort of characteristic. And, when I met you, I'm like, oh, another athlete. Okay, so our brains think alike. So not everyone that gets into business has that particular athletic brain, if you will. And the cliches, run rampant, but they're actually true. Business is a sport, and the idea is to win well, be a good sport and win well. Winning's fun. But so back to the sort of observation is, see a lot of, in business, entrepreneurs are athletes on a different field of play. And that's just sort of the yin and the yang of it all. But I do see a lot of, especially in the gig economy and the, social media and all this opportunity to launch your own little brand in your enterprise. I see a lot of, because we work with independent contractors all over the world and help them level up. And I see a lot of them go off half-cocked around ideas that aren't necessarily built to last, and are built on some things that are, let's just say, not bedrock. And, we're all young at one point in our life, and a lot of times we got to learn things the hard way. So, I've seen a lot of people learn things the hard way, and, I don't say I told you so, but here's what I have at age 54. I have a little bit experiential wisdom, shall we say.
Oh, and so back to the mindset thing, like when you were training for the Olympics, what was your mindset? Like, were you visualizing your runs down the trail? Were you like believing? Did you have affirmations? What were some of those things?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. So back to mindset. Sorry, I went off squirrel tangent. Yeah, mindset. Yeah, the brain's mind's a weapon. So yeah, yes. Did I do affirmations? Yeah, I didn't call them affirmations. I just called it conditioning. That worked in my, like, affirmations sound like a Hallmark card to me. And I understand the principle. In my brain, affirmations is really just about conditioning the brain with language and with thoughts. And so, yes. So here's the big takeaway for me with mindset is when it's showtime, it's time to turn the brain off.
Yeah.
In my sport of downhill ski racing, if you were trying to think your way down a downhill course going 80 miles an hour, not a good idea. You have to be animalistic and reactionary, and you just have to let everything go with your physicality and your presence and your state. So trusting that and then letting that go when you left the starting gate is a thing. Now, bodybuilding, little different animal, but in the end, when you go on stage and you're trying to think your way through poses, that's probably not the best idea. It's like maybe an artist trying to think their way through a song, right? You can kind of see when artists do, or when athletes are trying to think their way, it's just clunky, right? And so, what athletes at their best give us all is physical, vivid representations of excellence. And it looks easy, right? When athletes are in the zone, so to speak, it looks easy. And so that tends to be, they're not thinking, I can tell you. They're what they've done over time is they've conditioned conscious work long enough where they become unconsciously competent.
Yes.
And so the mindset thing, it's just like working out in the gym. You got to work out your brain and work the mind. And here's the inconvenient truth of me for my athletic careers, I was always my worst enemy, and rather than my greatest asset. So, and there's everything in between, right?
Yeah.
It's like the gray middle. You can be your worst enemy, and that's the overthinkers and the I'm not good enoughs and the blah blah. It's that bullshit. And then there's I'm the freaking man, and I'm going to go out and kill it. And you can take that a little too far too. But there's a sweet spot there in the brain that's comes from a joy found in effort, comes from stand and some of my best races in a weird way occurred when I was really angry. And that's a weird thing about downhill ski racing, because it's a bit of a testosterone sport, and you gotta really like, and women do it too, but I say man up. But I mean, there's an element of state required, and but mindset, man. Here's the thing about mindset is if you don't have if you want to read a great book for the athletes that are out there, or the parents, I think this should be required reading for every parent. It's a book written by a guy by the name of Daniel Coyle, and he wrote the first book on Lance Armstrong. But his sort of franchise now is his book was called The Talent Code, CODE, Talent Code. He wrote another book called The Culture Code, but The Talent Code, phenomenal book. Highly recommend it. There's one chapter in there where he talks about sort of the X factor. And the X factor is ultimately what gives you the mindset to be a gamer, right? But he named it. He called it a rage to master. And it's the first time I'd ever heard anyone articulate that thing that had been inside me. I had a rage to master my sport in a good way, not in an evil, dark way, but in a bright, powerful, human way. You're just possessed. And when I was growing up, I always knew what I wanted to do. And I look at all my teenage friends and they were like, I don't know what I want to do. Because we live in a world of abundance. You could do this, and this. I wanted to do one thing. And it was sort of God-given. It was just like, that's me. But when I retired, then I was the bobber out in the ocean, bobbing around, because I'd lost my whole frame of reference. And it took me about a decade to figure out my life after, being in the sport. So mindset came into play after that as well. And the only thing I did well in that decade worth of swimming and swirling, and I was on the treasure hunt and I just kept swimming. I just kept moving. And I see a lot of athletes stop moving when they retire, and they just kind of fester and, wander and woe is me. And they become passive and reactive and defensive. And anyway, mindset kind of kept me going, I guess, is the teachable moment there. It just kept me moving.
Wow. And that's incredible, because after retiring from bodybuilding, I was definitely swimming. I mean, and I might still be swimming. I mean, this is brand new. Everything I'm doing is brand new. So I could but it's like keeping the forward movement going, and something will stick. Something will light you up, like skiing did, like bodybuilding did. So it's in being okay in the limbo part and trying to figure out what sticks again. And I think that's really huge what you said. And I think a lot of people think that they're alone going through that when they leave a sport that they love, even if it's from coming out of like high school basketball. And let's say they were like really good at it and now they're done. And so I guess
we were just talking before you hit the record button, and this kind of cuts to the point I was speaking to you on. Is someone told me right after I retired, and it was pretty sobering counsel. It was like, you'll never find that passion again. And I was like, what do you mean? Really? And it was kind of a body blow.
Yeah. Do you believe
And
that?
it's turned out to be very true. It's turned out to be true.
Okay.
Where I've landed is, at least in my career, if you want to think of it in terms of career, because I have passion for my family and my kids, and but that's a different part of my life.
Yeah.
It's your vocation, right? Your life's work, right? Where I've landed with is I am wicked passionate about the game,
Yes.
and it can be, I find myself in this unique position. I didn't plan it this way. It wasn't by design. I have a successful health food business, which gives me a ton of free time, and I've ended up becoming a consultant for a lot of startups, and I'm into all of them. I think the personality online that speaks to this is, I think, Gary Vaynerchuk. He's into the freaking game.
Yeah.
And it can be this, it can be this, it can be this, it can be this. He's into the game. He's into winning, right? So the winning thing is a three-dimensional chess in business, right? And that's the thing that I'm passionate about. I can get passionate about feeding pigs in Vegas if that's the game and that's the hustle and that's the business. Show me the ROI, show me the economics, show me the execution plan. Like that's the right. I can get passionate about this thing over here. I'm consulting on a ski company right now. So and a waste recycling company now. So I get excited. Where I found my passion is the game.
Gosh, that makes total sense. After knowing you and having talking to you about the health food business and things like that, I can definitely 100% say the game is your passion. And I heard this quote and it reminds me of you. It's and I guess athletes too. It's learn the rules of the game and then play better than everybody else.
Yeah, that cuts to the yeah. If you don't understand the rules of your game, good luck.
Good luck. But once you learn them, now you can play better than everybody. And that might be with your X factor. That might be with your love of the game. And so I like that because I'm kind of finding that within the game that I'm playing now on social media and kind of with all of these things I have my hands in, is the game is really fun and getting out there is been really exciting. So I'm really happy to hear that.
The game is fun. The game is fun, and here's the translation: is finding the game that becomes your moneymaker. Right? That's the treasure hunt. A lot of fun games out there, but I guess in terms of a career and life's work and in the economic conversation, finding the game that becomes your moneymaker, and you can have multiple moneymakers, but there's some principles around that as well. So
Yes, there are. Yes. So, and I don't know if we've ever really talked about this, so I don't know if this is a curveball, but spirituality was a huge thing that actually bodybuilding taught me. That was like my training ground, my connection. Did you have a spiritual influence when you were competing?
yes and no.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes and no. I had a very naive, uh, call it, what's the word I'm looking for? Naive. And what is my young teenager? She is, she's naive. She thinks she knows everything. Well, so yeah, so I grew up in a family of deep faith, and I was an acolyte in the Episcopal Church, and I would have my ski clothes on underneath my acolyte robes, and I'd put out the candles and wash the things, and then I would leave and like go up and go skiing. And so, I grew up, and all my, so I grew up with that, my faith. But when I was an athlete, it was just so naive and so ridiculous. I was like, God has better things to do than just, I'm doing like a selfish thing right now. God, I'll get to you later. Like, I'm good, And so it was sort of this stupid, like really sort of childish thing, where I knew God had better things to do than to worry about me, like doing my sport. So it was sort of very, very that way. I knew I was a guy of faith, but I'd get to that later, right? Kind of thing. So to answer your question, I had faith, but I was not a living, breathing. It wasn't part of my game at the time. Now it's the central core of my game. So
Yeah.
yeah.
That's
I mean, so
amazing.
and that journey came after I had started retired. When you have kids, then you start, well, at least for me, that was a clarifying moment, shall we say, of, why the hell am I here? And, who am I and what's the universe about? And then I had to sort of, actually deal with the questions at hand, which were my faith ultimately. And I had maybe been running from them, or not run. They had been in a closet for a while, but my kids activated my faith. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's such a beautiful thing. And I like how you, would you have made it more of a central thing when you were in your athletic career? Would you, like, knowing what you know now, would you bring it back in and
Oh,
make it a
no
thing?
question. No question. What I would have achieved in knowing what I know now, that experiential learning wisdom you achieve with age, is I would have been much more myself back then as an athlete, because I look back on my career and I was always trying to copy others that were better than me. And I was trying to always pick the best elements of everyone that was better than me. And I was picking this and picking this and I never found my John Hancock. I never found my signature. I never found my, when you hear an artist, you hear a person's voice and it's like, got it. And like, it takes you two notes, right?
Yeah.
Or you see, the silhouette of an athlete and you just kind of know, like, finding your John Hancock, finding your signature. I can look back on my career and say, can't say as I ever really found my Jeff Olson way of skiing, because I was trying to be a mashup of all the best parts of each person that I admired, and I never synthesized. It was sort of like paint. I was like paint by dots, or paint by numbers. I was trying to make my career paint by numbers of the best. And we've all seen pictures that are paint by numbers. They don't quite match up to, the artistic rendition of the art. So anyway, does that make
Okay.
sense?
It totally makes sense. And knowing you now, it seems like you're very much your John Hancock. It seems like you very much
Yeah.
have a signature. And when I hear you speak, I know who you, like when I see you at some of the conventions and stuff like that, it seems like you have this way about you now that is very much Jeff Olson, J.O.
Well, as you age, you get comfortable in your own skin.
Okay. Yeah. And that's great. And I think that a lot of athletes do try to pick from all different in every area. So you're not alone there. And I see it a ton in the bodybuilding world. People try to pose like this one or post like this one or work out or do videos. So everybody is kind of copying people, but they're not being who they are. And I think that's it's a little bit of
There's one
fear.
Mona Lisa, and if you're
Yeah.
trying to paint by numbers, like, that's the best analogy I can come up with. You got to find your paintbrush and paint your painting.
Be your own Bob Ross.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Okay, so let's shift over into business stuff now. So, okay, something that I've noticed, and I am just new into business in all different areas, is there are huge parallels between being an athlete and being an entrepreneur. There's perseverance, there's believing in something that you don't see yet, believing in a paycheck you don't see, or believing in X, Y, and Z that you don't see, and going through the hard stuff, leading with your heart, working smart and hard. What are some of the parallels that you can speak on between entrepreneurship and business and athletes?
That's a pretty loaded question.
It is.
Yeah. Well, understand the rules of the game. You'll be held accountable by the rules of the game you choose to play. And the rules of the game in business center around, money, cash flow, what constitute, someone buying anything. And so when I retired, I finished my degree in finance and I learned about money. Pretty helpful, practical degree to get.
Yes.
And I became a student of the principles of money, right? So a lot of people get into business and they have no effing clue on what money is and how it works. I mean, money is a consciousness, and it moves and it flows and it goes, and there's scarcity mindset around money and abundance around money, and man, money makes people funny if it does anything, or money makes you more of who you are. And it's probably a little bit of both. And so I guess what I did early on is I would always train here's another thing I learned in my career. I would always train my weakness as an athlete,
Yes.
but I never amplified my strengths. Meaning I had my strengths and I knew they were there, but I was always working on my weakness. If I had to do that all over again, I would have powered down on my strengths, and I would have managed my weaknesses, but I would have laid into my strengths. So that's a whole other, that's a subtle, nuanced distinction there, and just work, and gets back to sort of authenticity and being you, is lean into your strengths and amplify your strengths and manage your weaknesses,
I like
rather than be paranoid and maniacal and try to fix them. You can manage them. So I became a student of money and just kind of understood but when I retired, I went and got a job, and I was an employee.
Yeah.
And I was working for the man, getting a paycheck, exchanging time for money, and it was fine. It was a great learning experience. And I picked my degree in finance because I didn't know anything about business and I didn't know anything about money. I was so naive and such a green behind the ears. But I went to my weakness, and in that sense, it was quite practical. And that's how I finished my degree. And I skipped college when I was an athlete. I had to come back to it after I retired and finish it up. But in hindsight, it was, that was a good call. So I learned about what makes money move and what makes money work. And, I still don't have it all figured out, but I take high percentage shots now. And if I can help mentor, young hustlers, that's what I help them try to do, is see the business principles behind what I'm passionate about, what I'm doing, like in the health food space as an example. But I became a student of money after I retired, and that game has a particular set of rules. So.
And even just thinking about the rules of money, investing has a similar, I'm thinking of compounding interest, and like nutrition, how you compound your nutrition. You can also compound your money, and how they they go hand in hand a little bit there.
Einstein called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. And if you own it, you reap its benefits. And if you don't, you pay for it. And I apply that metaphor to eating in the work that we do. And there's a compounding effect to nutrient dense foods, which are a deeper level conversation for most people beyond carbs, proteins, and fats. So the compounding effect builds something over time. And if you can execute on fundamentals over time in anything, you'll have a compounding effect.
Yes. And this can go negative too. Something that I've also learned is you can have a compounding effect go bad. So like if you stop working out, for example, and you just let that pile and you let that compound, eventually you're going to be a blob. Lake City, and it's going to be really hard to pick up that, to go back outside and go for a run, because you've had your compounding interest and now you're all the way on this end. So I think that's a really important thing with money, with health, with business, with anything you're doing. Just know that whatever you're putting into your equation now is happening over time.
Yep.
So we talked about your life lesson as a athlete. Do you have any lessons so far as an entrepreneur, business guy?
Oh my gosh, yes. Heavens. Become curious and become a student of blind spots. And all that to say, you know what you know. And when you're young, you know a little bit. And you know what you don't know. Right? And I don't know how to fly a plane. And I know that I don't know how to fly a plane. I know what I know, and I know what I don't know. I don't know how to do heart surgery. But it is the domain of I don't even know what I don't even know. where growth, discovery, possibility, all of that unfolds in life. And so if you can be humble enough, it's sort of humble hubris. It's like, I know what I know, but I'm interested in more. The people I admire the most have a humility about them. They've got game, but there's a sort of a childlike wonder in their pursuit, in that they've always got their antenna up to be learning and be growing. And in the end, that's sort of the turnkey to happiness, right? If you're growing, chances are you have a happier tendency if you're growing and expanding, right? And the only way to grow and expand is to enter into terrain that you've never been to before, and oftentimes that terrain is like you don't even know it exists until but you're moving, right? And you want a better outcome, ask a better question, a mentor once told me. And so always be questioning and curious and having that childlike wonder. I mean, children are really good at just asking the simple, dumb, obvious questions that just sort of come out of left field, and never thought of it like that, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is probably in business, that keeps you moving, that keeps you hustling, that keeps you growing. Welcome the blind spots, welcome that discovery. But then as I say, settle in, but never settle, meaning settle into what you're good at and roll. But always have that as a way to stay humble and curious, and that to me helps me have a joy found in the effort. I mean, in the Olympic charter, there's a tagline in there, and I cherry pick there. Athletes have a joy found in effort, and if you don't have that in your work, it's probably not the right work for you. If you don't have a joy found in effort, it's probably not built to last.
Joy found in effort. Wow. Well, I love that. Cherry picking that. Thank you.
Yeah.
And so I guess, so I want to segue into like what makes a good entrepreneur, how to see a good opportunity when it's presented to you. So kind of stuff like that. So people out there, I feel like there's this Gary V, like all of these things coming up, and everybody wants to be an entrepreneur. Everybody wants to own a business and do stuff like that. So how do you know a good opportunity when you see it?
Great question. How do you know a good opportunity when you see it? I mean, I know the answer. I'm trying to, people get excited about a lot of shiny things. People get excited about a lot of squirrels, myself included. We live in the next new thing, the FOMO sort of mindset, the fear of missing out thing. And so what that tends to produce is a way of being that can produce it's not schizophrenic, but it's just here's the way. There's a lot of people snorkel in business, and they're snorkeling across this thing and snorkeling across this thing, and they're looking at all these beautiful fish and beautiful things, and but they never scuba dive. And I don't know if that's quite the right metaphor, but when you scuba dive, there's some danger involved. You got a certain amount of oxygen. You got, and oxygen in business is cash flow. Like, if there's anything in business that I would help people focus on is cash flow. If you can't launch a business and immediately start generating cash flow, and you're waiting for the big, nut down, like cash flow is oxygen in business, right? And so there's a business principle. But the difference between scuba diving and snorkeling is, one, you're interested, one, you're committed. And there's I mean, you can
That's
always
huge.
come up, from scuba diving, but the analogy works to a point. But I guess understanding some, half a dozen things like cash flow, like how do I get to cash flow in the first few months? I'm
Mm,
not talking about working on a business for the next 6 months, next year and a half, waiting to get paid. Like, and with every rule, you can find the exception to the rule, right?
sure. Yeah.
What I'm trying to show people is how to take high percentage shots. Like, what's the layup here, right? I'm interested in layups. I'm interested in a nice forehand ground stroke. I'm interested in skiing on your downhill ski. Like, what's the business principle? And one of the big business principles, especially for small business owners, especially for young hustlers and gamers and it's like cash flow, right? So it's one thing to create cash flow, but another principle another principle to consider is, does it provide any leverage? Is there any way that I can grow that cash flow beyond my own ability to produce cash flow? And so this is one of the central problems of like the Gary V generation is the leverage that he created that put him on the map was the leverage of wine. That put him on the map. Now, he was a little celebrity in wine. He became a bigger celebrity in wine, and then he became the Mac Daddy of wine and wine TV and wine library. But what was he offering? He was offering wine, and people will buy wine whether he's on YouTube or not, right? And so that cash flow, that hungry beast of people wanting to consume wine, that rolled, and he was making money while he was not working, meaning he had leverage, right?
Mm,
And what I see a lot of the Gary Vaynerchuks and I see a lot of young people is they want to be the brand. They want to be the influencer, and I love Gary Vaynerchuk has an opinion on 25-year-old life coaches, and I have an opinion on 25-year-old life coaches myself, and good luck with that. But what gave him leverage was he had a hard good, right? That shipped. He had a hard good that shipped, and people would be buying that hard good, and he would be shipping that, whether or not he was like online at that particular time. So influencers, like when you boil down business, it gets down to two things. Do you have goods or do you have services? And what services and goods do you offer? Challenge with services is it's hard to scale services beyond your own service that you're rendering, right? Now you can start a company and build an agency or build a business and hire employees and get that's a way to get leverage. Employees create leverage.
sure.
And what employees allow you to do is create more money, more income that's coming in than your own ability to produce it. We do it a different way. We just work with partners. And we say, let's go build some collaborative income. I'm going to mentor, train you, build you up, scale you, grow you to be, the badass boss babe. And I'm going to take a little bit of revenue share from you. And it's an agency. So you're the agent, I'm the agency. So that's leverage. So in business, cash flow, and then how do you create leverage from cash flow? And you talk about the gig economy. It's like when you're an Uber driver, you make money when you're Ubering, but you don't when you stop. Like when you turn that app off and you're off the grid, how are you making money? So gigs today can provide quick cash flow, right?
Mm,
Most gigs that I find have zero leverage. There's no leverage there. And if you're an influencer and you stop posting, game freaking over, man. And I know a lot of influencers. I don't know a lot, but I know enough to know that they know a crap ton of influencers, and they're swimming in the desert of no cash flow.
yes.
And they have 50, 60, 100, 200,000 followers, and they're scrapping to make a professional level of income because, there's one good looking chick or one hot bro behind you that's just going to step into your eye candy post and replace you. So
Yep.
how you create leverage, and this is playing the smarter game. You got to be as smart as a fox. So how do you create cash flow? How do you create leverage? Those are two sort of business principles that are pretty important.
Okay. Amazing. Thank you
Does
for
that make
that.
sense?
Yeah, 100%. It does. Now I'm like thinking of all different ways I can create leverage. Like, okay, this is cash flow. How do I, what can I do better and like scalable? I think that's a big thing too. And especially being a coach, I'm learning now, like, okay, well, I can only spend so much time doing one-on-one stuff with
Right. You're
everybody.
a coach. How do you scale your like there's a bottleneck there, right?
There is, even if I do group coaching, there's still
Yeah.
kind of a bottleneck. So even there's
Yeah.
a way to try to create some residual income, some membership bases, some sort of have a product that's on renewal or something like that. Like you have to always be thinking, and even being an
And what you
influencer.
end up like you have to be you're in the spotlight because you're the message and you're the content creator and you got to just keep producing shit.
Oh
Like
my
that's
God,
hard.
dude,
Producing shit is
it's
hard. What if
it's
you had
so
something
hard.
that was produced and you just shipped that thing, man?
Yeah.
So yeah.
Yeah, 100%. I'm with you. And even being in the influencer spot, once you stop, and you can have 130,000 followers and make zero money. I was in that boat. I'm in a little different boat now, but I was totally in that coming out of bodybuilding. Everybody just wants to watch me flex. Okay, that's great. How do I get paid off of that? And that's
Yeah,
not
I
the
mean,
name of the
influencers do not. Yeah, I mean, there's a great quote by this gal, and I need to send it to you, but it's something like, "Influence doesn't pay my bank account or doesn't fuel my bank account." Or there's some quote like that. But I know a lot of influencers who are, you know, just very underpaid for what they thought they would achieve. That's the game. It's like, oh, I'm going to get a lot of eyeballs, and then I'm going to get paid. Like, yeah, not so much. What used to be 70,000 is now 370,000 followers required. What used to be 70,000. So that will only get more and more and more and more and more. And again, how long you're 20, maybe you'll be an influencer for 5-10 years, and then what, right? Then you get married, have kids, have mom. Maybe you can be a mom influencer, but it's like you're always having to be the content producer, and that's a brutal. Good luck with that.
busy. It's busy. It's busy, busy. And what lights me up right now is providing value. And I know that it, like the law of exchange with the universe, if I'm providing value, I will receive some back in return. So now
Yeah, no,
instead of,
yeah, yeah.
oh,
That's business principle 101 is adding value. You can add a ton of value in the world we live in today with social media and not get paid at all. Doesn't mean you're not adding value. You're adding an incredible amount of value. I know a lot of people who add a lot of value. They just haven't figured out how to translate that into compensation.
yeah, yep, 100%. And I'm totally right there with you. I'm kind of in the middle right now trying to figure out where I fall with all of that, because like you said, like you can be a pretty influencer, that's great. Well, what happens when you stop bodybuilding and you're not super ripped all the time and you don't have abs to show off? Then what? Then you lose 20,000 followers like I did, and now you're trying to figure out how to nurture the people that you do have, because everything changes, and it's a very aesthetic world out there.
Yeah. Yeah. And I look at your sport, and I told you this before. You guys are walking billboards of health. How are you monetizing on that central narrative? Like people look at you and you're like, you're healthy, you're up to something. You must know your shit. What do you do? Well, if you're not figuring out a way to monetize that billboard, then I think, you're not taking advantage of the assets that you have, and you're not owning your influence. One of the things I talk to athletes about is you can rent your influence out, right? And rental income is great. I was able to rent my influence out in sponsorships, and people are about sponsorships, right? Good luck getting cash sponsorships today.
Yeah.
It's a different game. I had radio, TV, and print when I was an athlete. There were 3 distribution points. Now there's 100,000. So that game has changed, and I try to help athletes understand, if you can rent your influence and get cash, do it all day long. But perhaps you might want to consider standing for something, put your name behind it, and owning that influence, and building something. Hang on, sorry,
Okay.
building
Okay.
something beyond your day in the spotlight. And so you can own it, you can rent it. My advice is do both. So
Okay, I love that. And that's what you talk about with the sponsorship plus, because I was a sponsored athlete and I was renting my influence, and it ruined me. It burnt me out, ruined me. And I was like, you know what? I want nothing to do with social media. I want nothing to do with bodybuilding or any kind of company. And so now when I joined up with sort of what you're doing with the health food agent stuff, I can see a much better way where I'm owning my influence. And if I'm giving people this product or whatever it is, and I make my own commission and my own money off of it, not some $100 a month that a company gives me. So I think that's great to say. Now, just to close us out, I want to Do you have any like daily method of operations? Are there things that you do every day to make you successful, to get your mind right, your soul right? I know you mentioned earlier you were mountain biking. What are some things that keep you you?
I keep this very simple.
Okay, good.
I don't have a lot of regimen, uh, sort of daily practices. But I have one,
Okay.
um, and it works for me. I know a lot of people who are very regimented and very structured. I have the luxury, and perhaps the curse, not to have to be structured. So I have sort of the jazz day. Now I have things that I want to accomplish. Don't get me wrong, but I so but the one, I guess the one ritual that I actually have, and I was talking to my wife, because my wife is she is a hungry student of knowledge and gurus, and she's always doing this and trying. I mean, she's just, and I just look at all this, and 90% of this stuff, and I'm like, really? Like our brains are different. That's cool. My central practice is when I wake up, when my eyes turn on in the morning, and I leave the bed, like the central narrative is gratitude, and like that's it. If you can get up and put your feet on the ground with gratitude in the morning, your day's going to run just fine. And if you can get up and bounce out of bed with gratitude, you're going to have a joy found in effort. Gratitude is the central core of abundance. Gratitude is the central core of a happy life. Gratitude is the central core, that makes all things good, so to speak. So that is the one thing I do really well. Is I have been blessed beyond measure. I get up every day. I don't take it lightly. And I get up with gratitude every morning, and that seems to work for me. So
That's beautiful. That's all you need. I'm so glad I asked. Okay. Jeff, thank you. Is there anything else you want to tell the people? Where can they find you?
you can find me at Jeff Olson. That's OLSON, the Norwegian kind. OLSON. .info.
JeffOlson.info.
There you have it.
Wonderful. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time and energy, Jeff. I appreciate you so much.
You bet. Likewise.
Okay. Thanks for listening, everybody. Peace.
Peace out.